They wanted one of our 45 because they are a neat-looking, they're a handsome-looking pistol, and so I buried mine just as deep as I could into the mud, in the foxhole where we were at. But at that point, then they moved us on into a field house where they were going to interrogate us, but they started shelling it so bad that we figured we better get out of there. And so the German guards took us out. And then we started moving towards the rear. And it was about 8 miles. So we got into the town of Breda. And I have been back to that town of Breda. And they have a military academy there. And I walked, you got to get a souvenir for everybody wherever you travel. And I met this little old lady, and she says, well, how do you like our town? And I says, well, I like it very much. It was a little bit different than what it was before. Oh, you've been here before? And I says, yeah. Well, you should go over to the military academy then. And I got over there, and there was 3 guys coming off duty. It was about 5 o'clock in the evening. And their wives were waiting for us in their car. And so I walked over and introduced myself and told them that I'd been captured, and about 12 kilometers from here, which is about 8 miles. And so he says, well, your memory's still pretty good. And so they thanked me. They said, well, walk out in there. So I walked out onto the bridge that crossed the moat. Almost everything in Europe, if there's any big castle or building that's got a moat, especially if they're very old buildings. And the wife took a picture of me standing there at the corner of that. And the wife said that my whole demeanor had changed. So I suppose I was slipping back into that period of time. And, when I walked out there, just 2 days after being captured, you see. One of these here, this tall letter that you're looking at right here, this is the very first card that we were allowed to send by the German officers, and all it is just a postcard, and you cross everything out that didn't apply to you, and it said I'd been captured and I was not wounded or I was in good health and so on and so forth. And then this is the type of letter that we were allowed to write, and you wrote it to yourself. I mean, you wrote it to your parents on the other side, and then from yourself, and that's the only way that you were able to receive any kind of a correspondence from your parents. But I had been moving from one camp to another. I was in 2 big international camps. They call them stalags, is when it comes to the infantry. The Air Force, they're called Luftags or something like that. And but anyhow, I told my parents never to write to me because I was moving from one camp to another. And if you see right over here, that's the division insignia, the Timberwolves. And I was in the Air Force for anti-aircraft first. And then this was my regiment, the 415th. It's called Old Faithful. And I did make it as far as corporal, but that was given to me because in battle or on the front line or whatever, you could have been given a commission, you see, by just like my sergeant had been killed. And so anybody who had not received a commission, what they call a battlefield commission, was given 1 rank advance. And the 2 bars, those are each 6 months for overseas. And so you count the time that I did guard duty and on the Red Ball Highway, and then the prisoner while I was over there for just a little over a year. See.
Now, when they captured you, was it at all like it is? Were the German guards unkind or rough on you? Or?
No, they're very firm. And of course, when you got 2 or 3 standing with a rifle and a bayonet right down on top of you, and all these tanks in a semicircle. You had to use a little bit of judgment. Not that we were ready to give up, but I think your judgment said, well, gee whiz, if you got 10 guys on top of one, why keep on kicking?
Yeah. Okay,
You know,
but other
no.
than being firm, they weren't really unkind.
No,
cruel,
no.
or anything.
And I found that throughout, I have a couple of little stories, or one little story I can tell you about, if you want to consider it unkind. But the Geneva Council, or whatever it's called, for in world wars, it's out of Switzerland, made numerous stops through the camps occasionally just to see if they were kept clean, what kind of food we were getting. And towards the last, we started to get Red Cross parcels, which is that box, sort of about the same size as that box behind you there, that I have a collection of junk I'd like to show you. And then once in a while, and you got to realize this too, that at that period in time, the war was going kind of bad for the Germans, and I think the Germans themselves were starving to death. And I say starving to death, but I mean, their very supply of food was getting worse and worse. And so if we came up short, and many times we did. For example, just one. I may be jumping from one thing to another, guys, so forgive me on that. But one time we were sent over to get our soup, what they call our soup. At lunchtime we had 7-gallon buckets, and it took 2 guys to carry them because we were pretty emaciated and had lost a lot of weight and not as strong as you used to be, And so we got it back, and here on the top of our soup was, it had been made out of dehydrated greens, dried out, like you'd make a good stew out of frozen or dried vegetables. And floating on the top was full of maggots that had gotten into the dried food. And so our medic that had also been captured saw that, and he says, "You guys do not have to eat that." And so we dumped it down the toilet hole. So we went hungry. But one other thing that was kind of on the humorous side, and you said earlier about how did they treat us